Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. Today's episode is on financial wellness, the keys to financial literacy so women can thrive in their careers and lives. I have Saijal Patel with me today, the founder and CEO of Saijal. I met Saijal at a Room Women's Networking event during TIFF in Toronto, so last September, and we really connected. And I love her thinking, her enthusiasm, and her deep expertise. So to tell you a little bit about Saijal, she is the founder of her own wealth consulting company, Sage Wealth Consulting, and she's created an education platform dedicated to empowering women's financial independence and security. She's helped thousands of women. This content also applies to men, but women tend to have their own needs and journeys when it comes to financial security and education, me included, and I'm really excited to talk specifically about women at some points during this episode. Some things about Saijal are that she was formerly a business anchor and correspondent for Canada's Business News Network and CNBC Asia. So she's provided commentary and analysis on global economies, stock markets, and corporate news to millions of households worldwide. Saijal knows her stuff when it comes to finances and money. And she's also one of the most influential South Asian women executives in the media and entertainment industry, where she has contributed so much. And now she's taking all her knowledge to help women really get that education. Welcome to the show, Saijal.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Laura, and thank you so much for the generous introduction. That was wonderful.
Well, you're really impressive, and I want you to tell me a little bit more about yourself and your focus on financial literacy for women.
Yeah, so like you said, I have a company. It's a financial education and consultancy platform called Saijal. For people who are kind of clued in, it's a play on my name and wise women. That's how I came up with it. But I started this, Laura, 7 years ago, and the reason I did is I have been in the financial industry for a very, very long time, 20 to 25 years. And the thing that stood out for me was that financial education is absolutely essential. It's essential if we want to close the wealth gap, the prosperity gap, even the inequality gap, right? Everything that I have done and worked for has told me that, unfortunately, I would say about 90%, and I might be actually being generous with that number, but 90% of people do not have the financial education and the skills to be able to manage their money well. But I think what's even more important is that when you don't have that sort of education, you can't advocate for policies that actually make sense in order to help close that prosperity gap. You know, I truly believe that voter literacy comes with financial literacy. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to empower people. And in my case, it's women, because women do have unique challenges, not only just to manage their own personal finances, because that's the stuff that we actually have in control. However, that's half the equation. The other half is to understand how money works so we can advocate and question policies that might not make sense for us.
Fantastic. And what is your why behind doing this? What propels you to be doing this, Saijal?
I think because I feel, the world is just becoming so much more complicated. When you look at the data, the wealth gap is getting bigger and bigger. The financial industry is becoming more complicated. The economic uncertainty, I mean, we see this all the time. We've seen it in the last couple of years, especially post-pandemic. People are really struggling. And it has so many knockoff effects, right? The stress, the infighting, the political divide, And I think a lot of that can be fixed through financial education. I truly believe that. When you look at women in particular, and we know International Women's Day is every March 8th, and yet I don't feel we're moving the needle. And I think part of it is because when you look at the divide, men control 70% of the wealth in this world, and women control 30%. That's slowly changing as we're embarking on a great wealth transfer. So women are going to inherit a lot of that money. However, because men hold so much of the wealth, they're the most influential when it comes to economic and political policies, right? And they're going to see it through their lens. I'm not knocking men, but they're going to see it through their lens. And women don't have a say in that world. They're just not able to influence. And I feel like if we really want equality, women have to play a bigger role in that. And look, the benefit is for everyone. If women work, they're managing their money, they're paying it forward. We see a better balance. It just means that the pie is much bigger for everyone else. Right. And yet we're seeing a lot of short-sightedness on this. And I wanted to change that. The other thing is money traditionally, Laura, has been, it comes with a lot of shame and stigma. We don't like to talk about it. And yet I've never met anyone who does not care about money. We all do, right? Because we know that we need it to survive and thrive. And yet we're not taking the time to actually educate ourselves and build the skills for something that's so important.
Well put. Wow. And my former episode on the abundance code with Julianne Cairns gets at exactly what you're saying, the subconscious beliefs that we all hold about money. And one of those is money or wealth causes corruption, or you're greedy if you have money. And these things play out in our subconscious and can really hold us back from having the money to give us more freedom, flexibility, and security. Would you agree with that, Saijal?
Absolutely. It's funny because I hear that a lot. Oh, people who have money are greedy and it causes problems. And I always correct them because money itself, Laura, it's a piece of whatever it's made of, right? Cotton, paper. It in itself has no power. It's the people who have certain values that manifest those values through money. That's what creates the problem. So when I hear this, I say, well, if you attach great values to money, it can do incredibly powerful things and for good, not necessarily bad. And this is where I feel like we have to shift that belief.
Absolutely. And I've seen such philanthropists in my city. I've seen so much generosity. I mean, people have made a lot of money in the energy industry here, but I see so much generosity from a lot of them. And I just hate when we label people, they're rich, so they're selfish. They're rich, so they're greedy. But if you're rich and you're philanthropic and making a difference in the world, that's such a sweet spot.
It is. And this is where some of the political divide comes in, right? And we tend to believe that. I know we'll talk a little bit about abundance, but I do believe there's more than enough to go around. And it's that scarcity mindset, or if that person has more, that means less for us. I don't believe that. But we also have to fix the systems that actually have created that.
Oh, yes. We have a long ways to go. And this divide between men and women, I mean, it's a slippery slope. I mean, we work so much on women's issues and advancing women in our world. And then we slip back, right? Like things can slip back so easily. It reminds me of an icy ski slope where you can kind of lose your traction quickly. Yeah. And I think I'm really honored to have you on the show to talk about like what you're doing to make a difference here.
Yeah, so all my focus is on financial education. So, I have online programs that are dedicated for women, safe space. It's a holistic program where I really try to teach them all aspects of their financial journey so they feel more secure. They're able to build sustainable wealth because that is one area. But we also talk about bigger issues that are going on. So again, it leads to more voter literacy. Now, it's not skewed one way or another, but I think that just by empowering people on why certain decisions are made, that they can decide for themselves. So that is one aspect. A bigger aspect is working with corporations. Laura, I have a lot of corporations that come to me and say, hey, can you run a workshop? Can you help us build a financial wellness program? And so a big part of my business is now being able to offer some of these programs to corporations to support women in particular, especially because there's a lot of benefits for corporations that they might not be aware of. So again, it's a lot of education there.
And I'm curious, what role do organizations play? I mean, why would they want to be educating women on financial literacy? Why would they care?
Good question. It is really a win-win. Because here's the thing, and I hear this a lot, Laura. I hear a lot of corporations say, oh, I don't think we have a financial wellness issue. And I'm always curious, so why do you say that? It's like, well, nobody really complains about it. I said, well, no one's going to tell you that they're managing debt or, their partner has a gambling problem or whatever it may be. Because again, there's a lot of shame and stigma that comes with it. A lot of corporations think, oh, you know what, it's too personal. We're not going there. Here's the thing though, it becomes their problem because money is the number one, if not the number one, maybe number two, but it's certainly the top source of stress for people. And so when they're coming into work, the first thing they're thinking is, well, more money will solve my problem. And, these greedy corporations are not giving me money. Now, I'm all for fair wages for sure. But typically that's not the problem. The problem is how they're managing money. The problem is they don't have the education and the tools to make wiser decisions. Again, not their fault because they've not had access to that education. We know that there is a productivity issue. People can spend up to 4 or 5 hours a week just dealing with their financial situation. So engagement, productivity, retention is probably the biggest one because again, people will say, well, I'm going to jump to this other job because they're paying me $1 more without really understanding that, there's total comp, right? There's benefits. And again, that $1 more might not actually solve your problem if you're not managing it. And the cost, as you know, the cost of retaining talent or attracting talent can be 150%, 200% every time you lose someone. All that knowledge is gone. So corporations really do play a role. Now, the other thing is companies or employees are actually looking to companies to offer that. And part of it is because they're the ones who give them that paycheck, right? Typically, that first sort of introduction to some type of retirement plan is through their corporation, except most people don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use their group RSP or defined contribution pension plan because they've never been taught how to create a portfolio. So this is where they're really looking for their employers to be able to offer something in that support.
I think that really shows that you care about your people. Just like when companies bring in career development, training, and support, it really shows them I care about your career. I want to support your career, whether you end up working your whole career here, which is unlikely, or you grow and move between organizations. We want to support you while you're here. And that leads to great engagement. And when someone turns over, they speak highly of the company. And same thing with financial literacy. A company that teaches and trains and develops their people to be stronger with it will have a wonderful reputation.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. Financially astute people, if they're managing their money well at home, they're thinking about your money as well in the corporation. So there is a spillover effect, isn't there? They're thinking with that business mind. So yeah, there's absolutely no loss. There's been so much research done. We've done it. The return on investment is there, and it's like 15, 20 fold.
Wow, amazing. And I'm actually going to go through your course. I'm going to go through it because I have a lot to learn still. I've learned a lot by osmosis and I've never learned it formally. My parents didn't teach me much about money management, to be honest. And I kind of came into my own business 15 years ago and I've just learned by trial and error. And it's not the best way to learn. I've had some good mentorship, but I think I'm going to learn a lot from your course about my personal and my business finances.
Well, two things on that, right? I mean, most parents don't know. They don't have the skills either, and they're always afraid of making mistakes when they're trying to teach their children. And the other thing is, like you said, I think it's wonderful, Laura, that you have taken the time to learn a little bit, and like you said, through osmosis. My idea is if I can teach you what you need to know in 20, 30 hours, why would you waste the time? You can use that time for something else. The struggle that I see with most people, and that's not just women, it's men too, is there's so much information out there. And they don't know what to believe. So they become overwhelmed. They become afraid of making mistakes, whether it's in investing or something else. So it stops them in their track and they don't end up doing anything. So when I designed this program, it really was teaching people, and in this case, women, the foundations. It's like block by block so they really understand how the different pieces are connected. So they learn, they have worksheets. Anytime they get stuck, they can ask me questions. And that way they can progress and not be spinning their wheels. Because the whole idea is I want you to have a good plan set up in a couple of months if you can do it. And if you're working with an advisor, wonderful. You're going to be a much better partner and advocate for your own financial situation when you're sitting down with them.
Otherwise, we just defer too much to an advisor, which is risky, depending on the advisor. But this is your decision. You need to be in the driver's seat and have the advisor in the passenger seat as a trusted navigator and expert, but not as the driver.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with delegating, but handing it over blindly is not good idea. I always say, Laura, I go, no one will nor should care about your financial situation more than you. No one, and not your partner, not your kids, not your advisor, not the government, because they don't have the skin in the game the way you do, right? If things go wrong, you're the one holding the bag. So it's better if you are at least in control. Now, it doesn't mean you have to know everything. There are some people who, want to take that self-directed approach and want to get involved. But let's be realistic. Most people don't have that kind of time. You can't just set up a will contract on your own, right? Like you actually have to be able to delegate some of that. But the point is you should know what makes sense. And so when they're telling you something, you can judge, well, does that make sense for my life? Because they don't know. They don't know everything about your situation. They don't know some of the challenges and personalities and emotions that may be going on, in the family dynamics. You know that. And so it's really important to be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah. And so 20 to 30 hours, when women invest that time, what feedback are you getting when they're done those hours? And if those hours were well spent and felt like a long time or what?
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to say it's the feedback has been overwhelmingly wonderful, and I spent 2 years designing this, and it's 20 years of my my work and all my knowledge going into this. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the challenges that people do face, women do face. So yeah, we've had great news about it. And I always remind them this is progress, but once you kind of have a plan set up, you're only tweaking it every once in a while. So the hard work is really just that 20, 30 hours of just putting in and getting something designed with my support, with the community support, because after that, there's really not a lot you need to do.
Nice. I love the sound of that. I can't wait to try it out.
I can't wait to have you in it.
I'm sure I'll have some silly questions, but yeah, it's all part of the learning. I'm a novice at some of this, that's for sure. So let's talk about what abundance means to you, because my last episode on abundance has generated a lot of thinking in me and in others around, well, what does abundance mean? So what does it mean to you, Saijal?
I'm glad you asked me this question, and it's funny with the timing because I am currently doing a 21-day meditation on abundance with Deepak Chopra. He actually has a podcast, which I didn't know. I was listening to a podcast by Oprah, and they were talking about this, and I thought, oh, let me find this. And so I think I'm on day 10 now. It's just 15 minutes in the morning. It's wonderful. I How do I say this? I instinctively believe in abundance. I think there is infinite possibilities that the universe, or whatever you want to call it, provides. I really do believe that. I think where we get stuck and I fall back into that trap, so this is sometimes training, is that we tend to have a scarcity mindset, right? I think we've been trained to be fearful and say, well, if that person has that, then there isn't enough for anybody else. And we see this with money, with jobs, like, oh, there's not enough great jobs out there. Resources, whatever it is, but I think that's man-made. I think we've created that, but I do believe that there's a lot of possibilities, and it's about, we don't know what we don't know. I'm also a big believer in that if you meet the universe halfway, it does provide. And I think that's really important, right? Because I know there's people who just think, well, if I just visualize that money's going to drop on my lap, or, I'm going to win a lottery. And I said, I don't think it works that way. I think the universe is there, but you actually have to do some of the work. And that's about really just tapping into what I believe, God-given gifts, because I think we all have gifts and strengths, and if we're not utilizing it to make this world better, then I think it's a shame if we're not doing that.
I do too. Wow, you've just said a lot that really touched me. And I've done the 21 Days of Abundance. I first did it during the pandemic in 2020 with my film producer friend and her film producing buddies from around the world. And we all did it together on a WhatsApp channel where we reported in every day. And we did the journaling activities Deepak had along with that 21 days were really powerful. I don't know if he has those on the podcast.
I haven't seen it, but that's interesting. I'll have to look into that, the journaling. Yeah.
Yeah, take a look at his show notes, or so he might have, because each episode there's journaling activities that are about your relationship with money, and that comes from your previous generations in your family too, and they're thinking about scarcity and money and wealth and poverty and whatever it was. And then so I did that 21 days, and then I was able to really manifest the sale of one of my companies, and it was really exciting. Like abundance did flow and come from that. And I ended up doing it about 4 more times over the last few years, that 21 days. And it never gets tiring. It's really powerful.
No, it doesn't. And it's so interesting because like you, I've visualized so many things and it's turned up, and it's usually not in the way I expected it to be. And I don't even realize it. And then I think back and I was like, wow, I remember wanting this. I remember putting that intention out there, and then it showed up. So I am a big believer in it, and a huge believer in visualization.
Huge. And abundance to me means exactly what you said. It's using your talents to make the world a better place in some way, shape, or form, and to be able to have and live the life that you desire and that fits with your values. So if I value adventure, I have the funds that I can go to Machu Picchu. I have the funds that I can go to South America and different parts of the world, Europe, etc. I can do all this travel because I have abundance and the money's not holding me, stationary, and I'm not living in fear of my monthly payroll or, being able to, do the things I want to do. That's what abundance means to me.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Wealth. Someone said to me that wealth, if you have more than you need, that's not a good place to be either. More than you need. You should have wealth in order to live the life that you want. And if being a philanthropist and giving back is important, you have enough wealth to do that in abundance.
Yeah. In economics, we call it the diminishing power of return, right? Like, you need your basic sort of needs met, and that's what money does. And then extra. So maybe you can do some of the things that mean a lot to you and align to your values. After that, I'm not sure money matters. I see a lot of people who are unhappy because they don't know how to link that extra money to their purpose anymore. It's just kind of sitting there, and then it's creating paranoia, and then they get, and their life gets complicated. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there's all these elements that a big fat, bank account doesn't solve.
Absolutely.
But it can help. So again, I think that we just need to be mindful of what abundance means to us. Now, I want to know, Saijal, what trends are you seeing when it comes to women's versus men's financial literacy these days?
That's a good one. I feel we are moving the needle slowly when it comes to, um, if you want to call it financial awakening. I don't think we're moving it fast enough. And that worries me, especially because what is happening in the political landscape, in the economic landscape is like whoosh, like it's moving at such a fast pace, and we're not keeping up. And I believe like so many of the leaders in this world are thinking in that scarcity mindset, right? That's what they're doing. And so I feel we really need to ramp up and start really thinking about prioritizing financial education across the board, whether that's men or women. When it comes to men versus women, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've looked at research across so many developing countries and developed countries. And I'll tell you, Laura, every single country that I've looked at, when it comes to financial literacy, women lag men. Every single one. However, and this is what's really interesting, is that men are not that much better. So you might have like 60% score versus 40. Well, 60% still is not that great, right? But here's the other thing. They only look at intellectual concepts. They're not really studying the application of that knowledge, not always the mindset, but even then, women lag men when it comes to financial confidence. And what I have seen, and again, I'm generalizing, because there's always exceptions, but men typically, what I have found is they jump in. Like they just like, okay, I'll figure it out. And they tend to act and then kind of improvise, and they learn that way. Whereas I have found with women that I'm educating is that for some reason, society has kind of told them, and they have bought into this belief that, well, I need to be confident. I need to have confidence before I jump in and learn these things. And that's the difference. It is stopping so many women from building the skills because it's not confidence that they need. They need competence. right? Competence actually leads to confidence. You don't just wake up one day and saying, wow, I'm going to be confident. It doesn't work like that. It works when you're in there, you're in that arena and you're figuring things out and you got people to bounce ideas off and then you start building the knowledge and you become more confident. But for some reason, there's this big divide. And I see that you see this in the workforce as well, right? That classic, well, I want to apply for this job, but I can't do 3 of the 20 things, so I want to apply. And it's like, well, no, go for it because you'll figure it out.
Exactly. And I think in general too, we hear these messages, oh, girls aren't as good at math, right? And aren't as comfortable with numbers. So then it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They don't feel like they're good enough at math. And then when it comes to finances, it's numbers, right? And it reminds them of math. And it's probably kind of that. I wonder if that feeds into it.
It does. It does. I hear it a lot. Oh, Saijal, I'm not going to take your program because I'm an arts person. Well, here's the thing. Financial literacy is a life essential skill, and it's not really math. It's really, really basic math. I have women in my program. I've had 1,200 women go through this course. Every socioeconomic background. Some are new immigrants to the country. I mean, some are from different countries, and I've been able to teach them, right? Now, it might be a little bit harder, just a tiny bit harder, but if they can grasp it, anyone can grasp it. I don't use jargon. It's really simple to understand. And if you can just get even a 40-50% of it, you're well ahead of the rest of the 90% that don't get it. This is not a math issue, and then unfortunately it gets painted as that. Oh, it's numbers. These are just concepts that you're going to learn, and if it's taught in a way that's relatable to your own life, it's much easier because they get it.
Wonderful. So how can financial literacy improve our well-being?
Like we said, to me, financial literacy is a life essential skill. We all need money to survive and thrive. And I always say you should learn how to manage it so you can make the most of your resources. It is the number one cause of stress. It's a top reason. We saw it. It was interesting, even during the pandemic, people were afraid of their health. And then quickly that changed to they were afraid of not having enough money. So it's a big part of it. We know statistically that people who have financial issues, say they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they have a mountain of debt, or they're worried about retirement, they're something like 3 times more likely to suffer from insomnia. They're far more likely to be on medication. They're 25% less likely to exercise. So it's there, right? It causes stress in relationships, family, whether it's partners or with kids or with parents. So it's such an important piece. And, maybe I sound biased on this because, some people say, well, no, physical wellness is more important, or your health is more important. Well, I'll tell you this, Laura, I've never met a poor person that's healthy. Ask anyone that's homeless. They're not healthy, right? They don't have access to medication and nutritious food. This is why money is important, and we have to start changing that frame of mind and that dialogue that says that it's dirty or it's evil, because it's not. It's a necessity.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you the question, because you obviously are an avid learner. I see you just, growing in your career and doing lots of important things, Saijal. So what do you read or listen to lately for your own growth and development?
Well, I'll tell you, I wish I had time to read, or maybe I made time, I'm going to be honest. But, I wish I read more fiction books because I tend to like them. I don't. I spend most of my time. If I'm going to read, I'm going to spend time reading nonfiction books. I read, a lot of news. That's probably the business journalist in me. And I listen to a lot of podcasts because it's just easy for me to do two things at the same time, whether I'm cooking or, I'm going for a walk or I'm at the gym. I usually have a podcast on and I listen to a lot of different podcasts. So I listen to the New York Daily just to get caught up in some of the news, which is typically US based, some political podcasts. I listen to one called Monk Debates, which is a really interesting one because they take an issue, a topic, and they have two opposing sides, and they argue for or against a motion. And the reason I like that one is because it challenges my own biases and my own beliefs, which human nature, we all have it. So when I see a topic, what I do, and this is my little exercise, is they'll say, they'll talk about, say, the Israel-Gaza conflict, and I'll think about my own beliefs. What do I believe about it? And then I listen to it, and almost always my perspective not changes necessarily, but I learn so much about question my bias. So that's a really great one. Canadian Monk Debates. What else?
That's good. I mean, you've given a lot. Like that's awesome. I can tell you're a learner because more is coming to your mind. And yeah, that's fantastic. We're going to share that in the show notes and my monthly e-newsletter. I'm just going to do a little shout out to myself. I wrote 2 psychological thrillers, and they would be a great summer read for busy people like Saijal when she's on a vacation. They're page turners, and a billionaire abducts her high school sweetheart 10 years later into the perfect life he's built for them.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, I'll have to pick that up.
How on earth would you navigate that if you had endless money? A multi-billionaire has endless money to create, to hold captive, and to create this life that's quite difficult to escape from. And it delves into mental health, control of women, and a strong female protagonist. So I think you would enjoy it. And it's positioned for a TV series. So that's what I'm manifesting for 2025.
Good for you. Well, let's see, the universe will provide. I believe that.
Thank you. Maybe I'll have to do the 21 days with Deepak once more, just for good measure. My final question, Saijal, is if you could have one wish for a better world when it came to financial literacy for women, what would it be?
I would say be curious. I think curiosity is so important. It challenges your beliefs. There's so much to learn, not just concepts and ideas that are out there, but just about our place, I think, as human beings in this world. So I would say curiosity, I think, is so important. I think we would travel more. We would have far less conflicts than we do. Yeah, curiosity.
Beautifully put. Curiosity. If we could just be more curious, we'd be more open-minded. We'd have better discussions and debates rather than unhealthy polarization and conflict and fear. There's a lot of fear out there right now that's causing people a lot of mental anguish. So I would just suggest to not get mired every day in all the media because it's a lot of fear. I think it's important to be on the current events, but if you're finding that it drags you down, just pacing yourself with it.
Well, and looking, being curious also means exploring different views. We tend to, and this is just, again, human nature. We want to be right. We want confirmation bias. And it's hard. And as a journalist, I remember feeling like, okay, I don't like this, but I'd have to go there. I'd have to at least listen to a different view and saying, does it have merit? And I think, again, that's about being curious. And it's important to do that. The other thing I learned is, don't hate the messenger, listen to the message, because that's often important too.
Exactly. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up today. Thank you, Saijal. I've learned so much from you, and I hope this episode, and I know it'll help a lot of women and people in general. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this discussion. Thanks again.
Awesome. I hope you stay well. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.